The Swedish CV90 is the core of modern mechanized survival. Not the loudest vehicle, not the newest headline, but the platform that keeps infantry alive, keeps the fight connected, and keeps momentum on your side, under drones, artillery, and electronic warfare. If the modern battlefield is a hostile operating system, the CV90 is the armored node that still boots up when everything else crashes. Open on a cold tree line at dawn. Track a CV90 gliding over rutted snow. Turret steady, exhaust ghosting. You feel the tone immediately. Quiet competence. This is not a tank trying to dominate. It's a hunter guide, reading the ground, feeding the network, protecting the squad. That combination, mobility, protection, and information, makes it more than an infantry taxi. It turns it into the central nervous system of a platoon that intends to survive contact and finish the mission. We're going to show how the CV90 defines modern IFV warfare, why countries at war fought to get it, and what sets it apart in 2025. Evolution, upgrades, real-world lessons. Clean and simple. When the section headings change, the tempo changes. So watch for the visual cues and the punchlines. Then decide whether you'd want this thing at the head of your column.
Sweden's requirement in the 1990s sounded deceptively straightforward. Build an infantry fighting vehicle that can keep up with tanks, fight through Nordic forests, shrug off mines and cannon fire, and carry a squad that arrives ready to work. The answer was the Stridsforden 90, exported as CV90, engineered by Hägglunds with two uncompromising priors: mobility first and growth potential baked into the bones. The hull was sized for future armor. The electrics were left open for new sensors. The suspension and powertrain were spec'd for cold, wet, uneven misery. It was a platform with patience. The family multiplied. Sweden fielded the CV90-40 with a stabilized 40mm Bofors and programmable 3P ammunition. Other operators picked 30mm or 35mm Bushmaster cannons with their own airburst rounds. Command posts replaced troop seats with radios and screens. Recon variants traded cabin space for masts and sensors. Air defense fits turned the turret into a drone trap. The point wasn't to chase every mission. It was to keep a common chassis under everything, so logistics remained sane and upgrades spread fast. From the beginning, survivability wasn't a single claim. It was a layered approach. Low silhouette, angled armor, modular composites against cannon fire, add-on belly plates and energy-absorbing seats to tame mines and IEDs, slat kits to frustrate old RPGs, multispectral smoke that hides against the visible, thermal and laser spectrum, laser warning receivers that cue the smoke automatically. The message was simple: if you can't be invincible, be adaptable. If you can't stop everything, buy the crew seconds to act. On a battlefield measured in milliseconds, seconds are luxury goods. And then there's the culture. The CV90 was designed by a country that treats winter like a rigorous hobby. Power to weight stayed high, track stayed wide. The suspension evolved into active damping on later marks that let the gun stay steady at speed. Crews could actually hear the radio because newer rubber tracks cut vibration and noise. Mechanics stopped dreading convoy days. The result was a vehicle that didn't merely survive harsh terrain, it weaponized it, going where ambush geometry broke down and coming out the other side with time to spare. If MBTs are the heavyweight champions, the CV90 is the coach who also wins his own sparring matches and still shows up early with coffee. Not flashy, just disgustingly effective. Here's the heart of 2025. The CV90 stops being just an IFV and becomes the best kind of connected combat computer on tracks. Instead of focusing on one big weapon headline, it compounds a dozen small advantages into tempo, and tempo into survival. Turret brains first. Commander and gunner have independent thermal sights, stabilized with auto track that holds targets on rough ground. Laser rangefinders and meteorological sensors feed a ballistic computer that solves in a blink. The software stack now assists the human crew, highlighting threats, prioritizing targets, suggesting firing solutions. It's not replacing judgment, it's compressing the timeline between seeing and doing. The commander can hand off a target to the gunner with a tap, or push it to the platoon over the network without a second thought. The gun still matters, and the CV90 brings the right kind of route. The 40mm Bofors on Swedish vehicles fires 3P programmable ammo. airburst for infantry in trenches or behind windows, point detonate for soft targets, delayed for punching through cover. Other nations' 30/35mm guns do similar work with their airburst families. Either way, the effect is the same. Suddenly, cover is a suggestion, and drone operators hovering at smug ranges get unwelcome surprises. Protection gets smarter, not just thicker. Soft kill systems launch multispectral smoke on cue to blind seekers and spotters. Hard kill active protection is available, depending on operator budget and integration, to swipe inbound missiles out of the sky. Underneath, mine kits absorb blasts, and the seats keep humans intact. Signature management matters as much as armor. The CV90 treats heat and noise like threats, suppressing, shaping, and confusing the kill chain, so a cheap FPV has to work harder just to find you. Mobility continues to compound the advantage. With over 1,000 horsepower on the latest marks and generous track width, the CV90 can move like it means it. Active dampers stabilize the gun on the run. Rubber tracks cut sound and reduce crew fatigue, which translates into more hours in the fight and fewer maintenance ambushes. It isn't glamorous, but it is decisive. You can't finish the mission if your ride taps out. Electromagnetic discipline is no longer optional. The CV90's architecture makes room for jammers against small drones, shot detection arrays that spin the turret onto threats, and standardized radios that speak coalition. Hybrid options for silent watch reduce the thermal and acoustic signature when you need to sit still and listen. Power budgets support directed energy dazzlers when those come online. This is a platform that planned for tomorrow's draw on the alternator. And because the platform is common across so many armies, logistics and upgrades actually scale. Depots know the hull. Spares exist. When one operator solves a nasty interference issue between a new jammer and the turret drive, the others don't start from scratch. That is what game-changing looks like in practice. Not a single exotic feature, but a system that keeps accepting improvements without falling apart. Smarter sights with auto-track and faster ballistic solutions. Programmable airburst munitions for trench, drone, and cover defeat. Layered protection, laser warners, multispectral smoke, optional APS, counter UAS kits, jammers, acoustic/thermal cueing, shot detection, mobility tuned for endurance, high power to weight, active dampers, rubber tracks, open power and data architecture for new sensors and EW payloads, silent watch and signature management to survive the drone age, coalition-grade radios and data links to share targets instantly. In other words, the CV90 did a software update and somehow came back with better suspension, sharper eyes, and a sense of humor about jamming. If only our phones aged this well. This is the part that makes or breaks any claim. You can write all the glossy brochures you want. War doesn't care. So, we go where the terrain and the enemy get a vote. Ukraine's battlefield is an X-ray machine for nonsense. Drones circle everything. Artillery hunts signatures. Improvised FPVs thread windows. In that environment, anything that can't hide, move, network, and hit hard is living on borrowed time. The CV90's pattern there is unmistakable. Short, disciplined sprints. Smoke early, not late. Airburst clearing hedgerows. Squads dropped exactly where they can influence the fight. Vehicles that come home often enough to matter. It's not invincible, nothing is. But it keeps buying time and space for the people who actually close with the enemy. Afghanistan taught a different set of lessons years earlier. Mines were the monster. Heat and dust were the side quests. The CV90 answered with belly protection packages, shock mitigating seats, and a drivetrain that didn't melt down at altitude. It put a stabilized cannon into tight valleys and urban blocks and let squads dismount under cover. The lesson that carried forward: survivability is as much about process as it is about plate. You can't armor your way out of every problem, but you can equip the crew to see trouble, act first, and ride out the impact. Training is the multiplier no one can ship in a crate. Vehicles this integrated can be a symphony or a garage band. The difference shows up in seconds. How fast does a laser warning cue smoke? How quickly does the commander push a UAV spot to adjacent vehicles? How reflexively does the driver pick a route that denies top attack angles? Units that drill this turn the CV90 into a rhythm section. Hide,
hit, move, reset, that keeps losses tolerable and pressure constant. There is also the combined arms reality check. When the CV90 meets a main battle tank, doctrine takes over. You don't duel frontally. You spot the heavy early with sensors and drones. You blind it with smoke and interference. You strip away its protective screens with airburst and precision fires. Then your own heavies or dismounted top attack teams take the shot that ends the conversation. The CV90's job is to make sure the tank never gets a fair fight. It's not cosplay for knights. It's the chessboard that denies the opposing queen the squares she wants. Why did countries push to get CV90s when the shooting started in Europe? Because it wasn't theory. It was a mature platform with spares, crews who could cross-train quickly, and an upgrade path that didn't require inventing a new alphabet. It's big enough to matter, and small enough to sustain. When the question is, what can we field now that will still be relevant next year? The CV90 answers without hesitation. Also, it's the only piece of Swedish furniture you don't assemble with a tiny hex key, unless you count the torque wrench. How the CV90 defines modern IFV warfare. It reframes the role from armoured bus with a gun to combat router with teeth. Every element serves the tempo. Mobility to choose the moment, protection to survive the onset, sensors to compress decisions, and a gun that punishes exposure. It turns dismounts into a sensor shooter team the second they step off. It makes the platoon a mesh network, not a stack of silhouettes. That synthesis is the definition of a modern IFV. Why Ukraine and others chose it. Because it's survivable in the ways that matter now. Signature control, network speed, airburst effects, and the ability to integrate counter-UAS and EW fast. Because it's maintainable, common hulls, existing depots, crews that can move from one nation's variant to another without losing a month to translator mode. Because it delivers immediate effects in a battlefield where seconds are the currency of life. What sets it apart in 2025? It's the upgrade elasticity. The CV90 keeps accepting new sensors, software assistance, jammers, and protection layers without collapsing under complexity. It leverages coalition scale. It embraces cognitive aids for the crew. It treats survivability as an active verb, not a static number. It is already living in the battlefield we actually have, not the one we used to brief. Let's talk about pace, because that's where the CV90 cashes in. In a platoon-level engagement, the first vehicle to see cleanly, decide cleanly, and act cleanly controls the rhythm. The CV90's software trims indecision. Its network trims isolation. Its ammo trims cover. Its mobility trims risk. The other side ends up reacting to your time, not you reacting to theirs. If you've ever watched footage and felt one side always seemed a step ahead, this is what it looks like under the hood. Infantry noticed the difference immediately. The ramp drops where it should, when it should. The intercom isn't a steel echo chamber. Squad leaders get a live picture of the fight before boots hit dirt. When they mark a problem, the turret answers in seconds. When it's time to come home, the ride shows up because it didn't bog down in the ditch the map forgot to mention. And if a drone buzzes overhead, they hear the jammer bite and the smoke bloom before the adrenaline steals fine motor skills. That confidence is not swagger. It's the oxygen that keeps tactics calm. Some hard truths. Any tracked IFV is a priority target. The CV90 bleeds like anything else when mishandled or unlucky. FPVs don't care about your marketing department. Artillery will always be the king, but survivability curves change when you disperse, decoy, deceive, and then concentrate fire for mere moments before scattering again. The CV90 lets units play that rhythm credibly. Fast in, violent for 60 seconds, gone before the enemy's kill chain closes. That's a tactic you can repeat through a long day without running dry. There's also the industrial edge. Sweden and its partners aren't selling a bespoke unicorn. They're fielding a standard that Europe understands, repairs, and upgrades together. Joint training costs fall. Spare parts pools work. Fixes propagate across borders. When a new counter-UAS technique emerges, it won't stay trapped in one brigade's hard drive. That's strategy by maintenance plan, and it wins campaigns the way headlines never describe. A quick word on cost because it always comes up. Quality isn't cheap. Programmable rounds and smart optics don't grow on trees, but a platform with a long production run, a broad user base,
And a proven upgrade path doesn't burn money, it amortizes it. You're paying for tempo and survivability you can scale, not for one-off brilliance that disappears in the first hard month. That is how you keep fleets lethal without bankrupting the treasury or the brigade.
Think of it as the Volvo that did a semester abroad in artillery school and came back with tattoos. Sensible, safe, and absolutely not to be trifled with. A contested tree line, drones in the air, artillery adjusting, infantry on edge. The CV90 creeps under canopy, heat masked, radios quiet. The commander receives a UAV mark, enemy launcher team in a ditch line, 200 meters beyond the next hedge. The vehicle blooms smoke, shifts 10 meters, and the gun sends programmable rounds that burst exactly over the trench. The launcher icon disappears. The squad dismounts into the gap the airburst just carved. Another drone buzz cuts in and then cuts out as the jammer takes hold. 30 seconds later, the CV90 is gone, angled, silent watching, ready for the next handoff. That loop is why this design matters. The CV90 changes everything because it changes what we expect from an IFV. No more armoured buses pretending to be tanks. No more survivability as a static brochure number. No more vehicles that can't accept the upgrades the war demands. Instead, a platform that leads with mobility, fights with information, protects with layers, and grows with the threat. It keeps the platoon coherent under stress. It makes every adjacent asset smarter. It rewrites the cost-benefit of staying in the fight. So here's the question. When the next route to the objective is mined, watched, and wired, and the first drone swarm lifts off in the morning haze, what do you want at the head of your column? A headline hog, or the quiet machine that keeps everyone else alive and on time? The Swedish CV90 doesn't promise immortality. It promises time, tempo, and options. On today's battlefield, that's everything.